Okay, say and spell your first and last name.
Katie Warden. It's KatieWarden.
And then give me your title.
I'm the director of the Northwest ADA Center.
Okay, so let's start with the basic question. What brings you to Anchorage?
We're here to kind of meet with community leaders. We're going to meet with the Lieutenant Governor tomorrow, and we're trying to learn about disability issues in Alaska. So we were in Juneau the last 2 days meeting with city officials, the Independent Living Center there. So we're just kind of trying to build relationships with organizations in Alaska to learn more about the needs of disabled people here.
You will enjoy Lieutenant Governor Dahlstrom.
Yep.
And then did you go to the legislative building?
No, we just met with, some city officials, the city manager.
I was just curious.
It was beautiful though.
Yeah.
Because it was up on a hill.
Tell me a little bit for viewers who don't know, and I don't know. I want to learn a little bit more about the history of ADA.
So the Americans with Disabilities Act, it was passed in 1990, and it was a bipartisan law. And it's kind of a combination of disability activism with legislators who had family members with disabilities wanting to address discrimination. And kind of there is this sense that if we can prohibit, remove some of the discrimination that disabled people face, we'll be more likely to have successful careers, get to work, become more independent. So that's a lot of the history of the law, is trying to help people with disabilities live in the community, have employment opportunities, and it was driven by disabled people and their family members.
I read a book. It was a little girl. Wasn't there a little girl in a wheelchair? And I'm a children's librarian, or my career's been really crazy, but I have been a children's librarian, and there was a book that I read to my kids, and I can't remember the girl's name, but it was driven a lot by her.
She was part of the Capitol Crawl. And so it was a kind of a movement to show, look, even our, the seat of our government isn't accessible to people using wheelchairs. And that's a really visceral, kind of visual way of demonstrating the lack of accessibility there.
This question is not on the questions that Josh gave me, but I'm curious, does Alaska bring its own set of challenges? I mean, I just think about our weather, I think about our winter, and the amount of snow we had this year, and how difficult it was for people to get around who don't have a disability.
Right.
Does Alaska bring its unique challenges?
It does. I think snow is a huge issue, right? Where do we put snow? How do we clear the sidewalks so that people with mobility disabilities have enough space to move around when there's snow out? Making sure that we don't block accessible parking spaces with giant snow piles, which we see throughout our region, kind of in Idaho, Washington, Oregon, and Alaska, that snow removal is an issue. And then a lot of people with disabilities, we don't drive, right? And so we rely on public transportation more, and oftentimes if that transportation isn't accessible, that can pose a real barrier for people. So in rural areas, the lack of transportation and accessible transportation can be a serious issue for people with disabilities.
That was a problem, a big problem this winter, and that people could not get to the bus stop because of all the snow. We had a big problem with that. Okay, so let's see here. I'll go to Josh's question. Tell us about the Northwest ADA Center, how it serves Anchorage, the state of Alaska, and services. There's a free 1-800 number. Tell me about the 1-800 number.
Yeah, so we're part of this national network of ADA centers, and we all share a 1-800 number. It's 1-800-949-4232, and anyone in the country can call in and ask questions about the Americans with Disabilities Act. And the way do you want me to?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Tell me again, because I just got the camera.
So the 1-800 number, it serves the whole country. And so anyone can call it. It's 1-800-949-4232. And people call us and ask questions about the ADA. Maybe you're a small business owner and you want to know what to do if someone comes into your store and they have a disability. You might wonder, is this a service animal or is this someone's pet? How do I tell the difference? And so people call us and we can help explain how the law works, and kind of some tips for making businesses accessible. We can help people with disabilities learn about different resources in the community, because it can be pretty overwhelming sometimes figuring out who's responsible for what service and where do I go and what words do I use to get the services I need. So we can be kind of a resource center for people.
I needed that 800 number because when I was a librarian, I wanted to make sure the shelves were, there was a distance enough to get a wheelchair through. So I was Googling, I was trying to find out you can do it by eye, but I also was trying to figure out what the code was, if there was a code.
That's a great example. People call in, they sometimes send pictures of, hey, this is the sidewalk in front of my store, or this is the aisle in my restaurant. What do you all think? And we can ask, give us some measurements, and we'll compare them to what the law requires. So that, I wish. I know. So how long have you been here in Anchorage then? We showed up yesterday.
Have you looked around? What do you get a sense of what? I mean, it sounds like you hear a lot from people too, and you rely a lot on, you want to hear from people who are out there day to day living in the environment. But what's your feel about Anchorage and what we need?
Well, I have heard about the issues with snow before, and that is something we see in mountain towns kind of generally, that how do we make our sidewalks accessible during the winter months? And then accessible recreation's kind of an important part of our work in this whole region, making sure that people with disabilities have access to skiing opportunities or other kind of touristy type events. I can imagine that would be an issue here, and an area where we could help give examples or models of accessible trails or accessible playgrounds. But I think it comes back to, what do disabled people living in Anchorage, kind of what do they see as a need? And if they call us, we can try and help navigate services, point them in the right direction if they need more resources. And it's also part of why we're here. We want to learn more about what Alaska and Anchorage needs related to the Americans with Disabilities Act.
Have you talked to Nate Bolts, Challenge Alaska?
No.
He would be a great contact.
Okay.
He's doing great stuff at Challenge Alaska, which allows people who have, depending on what their disability is, the access to skiing and to do all these winter activities. And he does a really good job with it, so that's a good name. Okay, we talked a little bit about the calls that the center receives, and can you tell us about the population of people with disabilities?
So I think sometimes we assume that we know who people with disabilities are, and it's a small group. But really we often say, our nation's largest minority group, and it includes people with visible and invisible disabilities. The ADA also gives protections to people with medical conditions that we don't always think of as disabilities. For example, I have type 1 diabetes, and that's protected under the Americans with Disabilities Act. It also protects people who have mental health conditions like anxiety and depression. And often, as we age, we naturally develop disabilities, and the ADA protects all age-related disabilities as well. So it's this kind of huge group of really diverse people with all kinds of different conditions and differences that don't always think of ourselves as disabled people. But this law does protect a really broad group of Americans.
Thank you, that's really helpful.
Yeah.
Because it just makes me think about that. I know there's a meme or there's a quote or something, like you just don't ever know what people are going through, what people you don't ever know. So let's see, how can people, I think we already talked about that, but let's do it again. How can people reach the Northwest ADA Center?
So I think the best way to reach us is over our hotline, 1-800-949-4232. But we also have a website. It's the northwestadacenter.org. You can also reach us over email, And then we do trainings for businesses and nonprofits so we can kind of come into a community and do in-person work as well. But reaching out to us online or over the hotline is the best, easiest way.
So just to kind of like paint a picture here, if I'm opening a new business and I want, like, I'm not sure. I want to make sure that it's ADA accessible. If I'm, like, I can call the hotline or I can go to the website and get resources. There will be a person or somebody who will help me.
There will be. We're staffed from 8:30 to 4:30 Pacific time, and that's a great example. If you are opening a new business, there are checklists online that we can refer you to measure out every aisle. And you can also ask us questions about, what should my notice look like about service animals? Can you review the sign I currently have? And we can give tips on how to make a business more accessible. And so, yes, we're staffed Monday through Friday.
What am I missing? Gosh.
Oh.
Can we mention that the hotline is free
Oh,
and
sorry.
confidential?
Ooh, yes,
Yes.
we should mention that
Yeah.
one too. Yes, definitely.
Thanks, Josh.
So let me rephrase that question. If I call and I'm a business owner, and I don't want everybody to know what I'm asking, that kind of thing. Talk to me about the hotline.
So all of our technical assistance on the hotline, it's free and confidential. So we're not an enforcement agency. We don't share this information. Our goal is to help people do what they can to get closer to compliance with this law, to make their businesses more accessible. We're just an information resource, and we don't share information, and we really want it to be confidential so people are comfortable sharing what's really going on, and so we can provide more practical advice.
That's good. Those were good bites. I wish you did that. That was really good. What am I anything else? I mean, the only other thing, but I think it would be repetitive, is if there were 3 things that you want Alaskans, because this is statewide, just to know about the services that you provide, or if, leave them with 3 things that are really important. It could be the hotline and that it's confidential, but just as they're walking through the world, thinking, looking through this lens of inclusion and including everybody.
I think it's important, sorry if I can just jump in, to remind people that they're not alone, that this is the largest minority group in the country and the only one we could join today, just get in a car crash.
Okay, yep.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
Right. So if there were 3 things, I mean, I'm just putting a number on it, it could be 2, it could be whatever, but something that you want Alaskans to just leave with as far as when we're talking about inclusion.
We sometimes say in the disability rights movement that disability is a natural part of human life. It's a natural part of the diversity of being a human being. And so I think just recognizing that there's a lot of us out there. You can't always tell who a person with a disability is. And it's a group, right? It's a minority group that any of us can join at any time, right? We can be born with disabilities. We can develop them because of an accident or an illness, or they can occur just as we age and experience life. And so really thinking about disability as a valuable part of the human experience and thinking about how we can make our spaces as inclusive as possible to include kind of all those valuable different ways of thinking and being that disabled people can bring.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
You've done this before.
Thank you so much.
He left me.
You whispered in my ear, have you hit the red button?
Oh, okay.
Well, yeah, I gotta find the red button. Oh, it's over here. I got it.